Good morning, folks. We're back out here at Dad's shop today, and I got another package from eBay. Another lantern that I bought off eBay. This one will complete our series of the 220 line. We had everything from 220B clear up to the end of the production of the 220 model Coleman lanterns, except for the 220C. Somehow we never managed to come across one of those. So I was watching on eBay, I found one that was pretty reasonable price. So I bought it, and we're gonna open it up and see if it works. It does. I don't know if the camera will be able to hear this or not, but something rattling and tinking around in there.
Is it from France?
No.
Dilly on it.
No, it's not from France. It's from, well, you don't know. I scribbled out the address so they couldn't see it on the camera. It's from somewhere else, so. But yeah, hopefully that's not glass rattling around in there.
It's not a major award then?
No.
Okay.
Well, there's newspapers in here. And they took it apart to ship it. You see, oh, that's what's rattling around. He's got the little stud and nut off of that holds the vent on, taped down inside the vent. So that's
good news.
Yeah, that's good news. Hopefully that's all that was making noise in there. We got a Phillips County News from October 18th, 2023. I don't know where Phillips County is.
Maybe I'll get caught up with
it. Here's a crossword puzzle you can do.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, he's got everything wrapped up good in here. Let me get the camera over here a little bit closer so you can see, but man, he has got this thing packaged up nice. The guy's name was Dusty Dowell. And he has got everything individually wrapped in here and packed in there tight so nothing could move around. Everything's wrapped up in these big foam pieces. What the hell? He's even got the lanterns wrapped up in a dang felt blanket. I think that's probably the best packaged lantern I've ever received. I did ask him to package it carefully, and I would say he certainly did.
Apparently it's from Billings, Montana.
Billings, Montana. Yeah, I scribbled out the guy's name so I wouldn't accidentally show it, or the address, so I wouldn't accidentally show it on the camera, but then I didn't look to see what it said. Glass made it in one piece. And I know the camera's never going to pick this up, but very, very faintly right there, there's the green Coleman Sunrise logo. So that's the original glass. I'll see if I can find a piece of white paper to put behind there before we put it back in there and see if that'll show up on the camera. But without something behind it, I know that the camera will never pick that up. It's very faint. The second package that I got here is the collar that goes between the tank, or between the fountain and the bottom of the cage. I saw that it was missing when I was looking at this on eBay, and I just went ahead and found one that was correct for it and bought it. Plus we got an entire free felt blanket with it. You can't beat that.
That's pretty nice.
And the lantern has got a little bit of that lean to it, but I should be able to straighten that back up. We'll have to pull it apart. I'll go ahead and open up this collar. Pull it apart and put the collar in there. You got this wrapped up good too. I wouldn't have been all that worried about this. As long as it didn't get crushed, you're not going to hurt it too much. But there's the collar that'll go in there. Okay, I got the little stud that goes in the top of the burner up here out. It was taped on the inside of the vent, and the nut was seized on it. That's why the whole thing was threaded out of there. So I took it over and put it in the vise, heated it up a little bit, got a pair of channel locks and gently turned the nut off there so I didn't chew up the nut. Now it threads right on and off of there nice. I also started kind of bending on it a little bit, trying to get it back to where it's fairly straight looking. The thing is, the stem coming out's bent that way, and then the cage is bent the other way, so it's had a rough time at some point in its life, but I got it a little bit straighter now, and I'm not going to worry too much more about that until I get this collar in here. So I'm going to have to take the burner tube assembly off the top of there and get that collar in there, and then we'll try to get everything a little bit straighter as we put it back together. So we'll see if this will come apart. I'm guessing if that's out of there, somebody's had it apart, but that doesn't mean it wasn't 50 years ago that they did it. So everything could be come apart real easy, or it could all be seized up again. Pull the generator out of there and get it out of the way. Well, they've had it apart because this little, it fell back down in there now. The little eccentric block that raises and lowers the pricker rod on there, I pulled it almost all the way out. So that means that this stuff, yeah, it's all just finger tight on the fittings for the little lever that goes in the eccentric rod. So somebody's had this all apart for some reason, which isn't necessarily a good sign, because lots of times people tear it apart when it's not working and don't know how to fix it, and then just throw the pieces back together, and that's when you get stuff like the collar doesn't get put back in there. They don't realize it until they're too far along, and they say, oh, I'll put that back in there later, and then 50 years later somebody like me buys it and has to figure out what was wrong with it in the first place. That's not very tight either. Everything's loose. I guess we'll just see if that'll thread out of there first. Get that out of the way.
Probably a good idea to clean all that stuff while you have it apart. You might need to
Clean it while I've got it apart. Now, why would that need cleaned? I can see spider webs in there. Guess maybe he's right. Maybe we'll get the blowgun out and... Ooh, those aren't just coming loose, so sometimes the burner tubes will just thread right out of there, but they're tight. I'll probably just blow some air in through that hole. You can blow air in through the hole where the generator goes in there and cover up these two holes, and it'll blast it back out, and then I can get a piece of welder wire, run through there, try to get everything cleaned out, but I'm not going to force those tubes off of there. Don't want to end up breaking it. Now, if I've had this apart, I wonder how tight that is. You can get a adjustable wrench right down there on that valve body, tighten it down to where it's tight, and then you can use a second wrench or a screwdriver or something that you can stick through the handle of the adjustable wrench to try to turn it. And that wasn't very tight. I was thinking I might have to get our lantern vise out and put on the bench to get it to break loose, but it's obvious somebody's been in here. There was something wrong with this. They didn't get it fixed, and now it's up to me. It also looks like, I just now noticed that, the bottom of that's black. So I'm guessing this thing has flared up and had a lot of fire at some point, because it looks like it's all covered with soot on the bottom of it. The fuel cap's loose. Ooh. Well, it's kind of loose. It's loose until it backs up against the screw. So apparently the seal on that cap is stuck to the fount, and somebody's been rough on this poor old thing. The teeth are just, like the knurls on that handle are just chewed off of there. So at some point somebody has used pliers on there. I guess you can see it in the paint around there too. It's all knocked off there. So whoever had this was tightening and loosening that with a pair of pliers. So I guess at this point I can do the same thing. I'm not going to damage it any more than what it is if I use a pair of pliers to try to get it off there without wrapping a piece of leather around there and trying to protect it from getting chewed up. Somebody's already done the damage to it. I do have a really nice original 3-piece cap at home that I can put back on here that would work for this. Ooh. Well, I've never seen that before. Just pulled the threads right off the tip of that screw, so that must have only been in there a thread or two. And it's still, the bottom of the 3-piece cap is still stuck in there. I've never seen that happen before. And it's got channel lock plier marks on it, so somebody's already been in here trying to get this off before. That's interesting. Wow. Okay, I got that off of there, but I don't know how well the camera can see it, but it's crusty. And that 3-piece cap has seen its better day. I've got a lantern at home that should have a 1-piece cap like this. It's got a nice brass 3-piece cap on it. So I'll probably rob that off and put this cap back on the one at home. But for today, if I get this to a point where we're going to be testing it, we'll just use this cap. The city's testing their storm alarms apparently. I think what I'm going to do for today, for the sake of not making a hour-long video right now on this, just clean that up a little bit so that the cap will seal. I'm going to blow a little bit of compressed air through there, flush it out. I'll put a little bit of Coleman fuel in it, shake it around, dump it out, and if it looks like it's going to work, we'll just put it back together today and see if it'll work. And then someday when I've got more time than I've got today, I'll take the whole thing apart, pull the pickup tube assembly out of the fount. Whew. Let's see, that one you got to unthread. Let's see what this looks like. Oh. Leather looks pretty decent. It's actually not too stiff. I got a jug of Marvel Mystery Oil over here. I'll drop it down in that, let that soak for a few minutes. Take a look down in here and see what the check valve looks like. Looks like it's there. Doesn't look too bad. I don't know. There's no way the camera can see down in there. I can't line up the camera and the flashlight at the same time, but I think what I'm going to do right now, just to test things out, is put on my Amish fuel cap, put about 15 or 20 pounds of pressure in here, and just open up this valve and see if we get some air flowing out of here. And I'll be able to look at that check valve. I can spray a little WD-40 down in there on the check valve and see if we got bubbles coming out there, to see if this is going to be a bigger project than I have time for today, or if we can continue and try to get this thing to light up today. Okay, got my little air chuck with a pressure gauge on it. I think I'll set it about 20 psi. We'll put a little air pressure in here, see if it passes air through the valve, see if the check valve is holding, and then the next part might be, if it holds, will it also let air pass through it? But I hear, yeah, the check valve already is not holding. I can hear air leaking out through that. You can hear all the air pressure coming right back out through there. On a positive note, air pressure comes out when you open that, so that's not bad. Let's put this regular cap back on there. Put my freshly juiced up pump leather back in there, and we'll try pumping a little pressure in, maybe pushing a little WD-40 through that check valve will free it up and make it start working. Well, either it's not pumping any pressure in there, or that started holding because it's not leaking out of there now. And it pumped pressure, so that's all it took. That's good. I've said that in like 3 or 4 videos and it never worked. People are probably beginning to think I was a liar, but sometimes that is all it takes, is just a shot of WD-40 through there. It'll free up that check ball. If there's a chunk of dirt or something in there, it'll push it out of the way and it'll start to work. So I'm going to take this now and I'm going to just put a little bit of Coleman fuel in there, shake it around, dump it back out. I'll do that a couple times, then I'll come back and just try to maybe get a few of the big chunks out of there. And then we know it passes air through here when we open the valve. We know the pump's pumping pressure, and we know that that fuel cap held the pressure on there. So I'll get it flushed out and we'll start putting this back together and see if we can make it work. And then I think sometime at home I will take it back apart and clean the inside of that fount more thoroughly, but this will be enough to see if we can make it work for today. Okay, I flushed the fount out twice. And while I was doing that, I went ahead and took the burner tube, blew air through it all different directions. Those burner caps are pretty rough shape, but they'll work for now. I do know I've got more of those too, but I don't know for sure if they would be exactly the same from a more modern 220 lantern to the old one. But I know I've got extra parts for that. For right now, I'm going to have to pull the handle off here so that I can get this replacement collar that I bought put on there. Put the old screw back in there. There you can see that little eccentric block that I was talking about that came almost all the way out. But it is still in there. And I know I've showed on other videos how you line that up when it goes back together. So I'm not going to go into great depth on it on this video, but we'll just let the camera roll while I throw everything back together here. Let's see here. First thing, I gotta get Dad cleaned up the burner cage, or the cage of the lantern for me a little bit. Get that on there. Well, we might be okay. It's hitting the bottom of the threads there and starting to get tight, and this is still loose enough to wiggle around, so I think we might be okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did taking that off of there, and I've got it to where it's hand tight now, but it needs to go another, I don't know, 2/3 of a turn to be lined up properly, because I assume that this should be clocked the same way as a more modern 220 lantern is. So that's the way I'm going to do it if I can get this to turn another 2/3 of a turn here. Boy, I don't know if I'm crazy about going any farther than that, so if I turn this to match that, it definitely is not going to be properly clocked for lining up with the tip cleaner rod and the knob, but we also are already not properly clocked with the knob and the front of the lantern, so I'm not that worried about it now. When I take this apart to clean the tank better in the future, then I'll worry about getting the knob lined up correctly and everything. But man, I don't want to tighten that any tighter than that. Yep. Thread this back in here. Also, having a improperly clocked lantern to me is not as big a deal as it is to some collectors. Want everything to be exactly perfect, but I like lanterns that have a lot of character, that you can tell that they have been used and abused and are still working. Find the little screw that goes back in here. That's one thing that I'm surprised that Coleman never over the years changed. I'm surprised they didn't have an access hole through there to get to that screw. It's not impossible. You can get a screwdriver in there at an angle, but you don't get a really good bite on the screw, and you see a lot of these screws that are badly chewed up for exactly that reason. And all it would take is a little hole right there to go straight in from the side. Oh, that's not looking too terrible. Where I was bending it around trying to get stuff back straight. Plus just having the collar in there will make the frame sit straighter. I do think that these arms on the frame are bent a little bit, but I'm not gonna mess with that too much today either. We've actually got a limited amount of time today before I've got to get out of here, so let's look and see. I see daylight through the generator, so I'm not going to do anything more with that either. I'm not going to pull the packing out of the inside of it. Nothing. I can see that the tip is still there on the tip cleaner and looks okay. So for the sake of having a shortage of time today, I'm just going to put it back together and we're going to see if this thing will light up and burn, and if it does, I will take it back apart and give it a more thorough cleaning in the future when I've got more time. Now this little piece with the tip cleaner eccentric on it, they've got that all apart. But it looks like the packing is still in there. So we'll start to thread this back in there. We'll start to thread this back in there, but we're not getting very far. There we go. I think I might have had it cross-threaded a little bit. This wrench fit that? Heck yeah. Maybe that's hitting on the frame too. Maybe that's what's holding it up and making it a little more difficult to turn there. But we've only got to thread that in a little ways because we've got to get it lined up with the this little eccentric that goes up and down in here has a slot in it that lines up with that. So the easiest way to tell when that's getting lined up, I shouldn't have put that back together yet, is to hook this rod for the tip cleaner through there and keep it where you can, no, I can't go through this. Keep it where you can move it up and down, and then just keep threading this in there until you start feeling resistance from the end of that shaft hitting on there. So you can keep just gently working that up and down, and eventually you'll feel that the end of this tip cleaner rod is coming up there, and you have to get it lined up with the indentation in that eccentric block so that when it goes round and round it moves that up and down. And there it is, and it went right in. It was lined right up. All of a sudden I just can't move that up and down anymore. So you go ahead and ooh, that's tight. Maybe I should have addressed that while it was out of there. I didn't even bother trying to turn that, but take it back apart here. Why would that be that tight? All right, I'm gonna pause the camera and put this in the vise and apply a little heat to it to see if I can loosen that up. All right, that didn't take much. I don't know, Dad's over here talking about Stretch's Pizza in Malta, Montana. He's reading the newspapers that came with this thing, but I just clamped that in the vise, used my little micro torch, heated up around there for 10 seconds, just hot enough to get it to where if I touch it, I'm gonna burn my fingers good. And it broke right loose. So now, thread this back in there again. There we go, it just fell into place. Now it's moving the lever up and down. That's still threading in more.
You need to hold that lever?
Nope, I got it now. Everything, just didn't have it lined up properly. Once you get everything in place, it all just clicks right in. That was more of a struggle than I've ever had before, but I've never had one that wouldn't line up. And now when you turn that, it moves that tip cleaner up and down. And we put that in the fully up position. Gently put my tip cleaner back through the generator here. Apparently I'm boring. Dad's yawning over there.
I ain't yawning, I'm trying to breathe.
Oh. Okay. Hook that in there. You've seen this before. If you've watched many of my videos, you've seen me put a generator back in a lantern before. Snug that up. That should do it. Doesn't have to be aggressively tight. Well, it's clocked incorrectly, but it's all back together. And for the sake of time, since we're strapped for time today, I'm going to pause the camera and I'm going to tie 2 mantles on here, fill this up with fuel, then I'll turn the camera back on and we will pump this up and see if this will light and burn. Okay, I got the cap gasket to seal there, so we'll burn these mantles in and see if this old girl will come back to life after sitting for who knows how long.
Montana.
Turn that tip cleaner a couple times just to make sure that the tip's cleaned out from all the on and off and putting stuff together and taking it apart. Make sure there's not a chunk of debris in there. Well, let's give this a whirl and see what it does. It'll either burn or blow up, one of the two maybe.
Moving some air.
Yeah, I think the tip plugged up already. Turn the tip cleaner here. There we go. It's trying. Every time I turn the tip cleaner, I get a little burst of fuel you can hear. There we go. All right, that's just about enough. There we go. Lantern getting a little carried away there. Sounds like a jet engine burning. There we go. Open the valve up all the way. Let's give that another turn on the tip cleaner there. tell this is clocked incorrectly because no matter what you do, the handle's always in the way. It shouldn't be coming down to where it's always getting in the way of the knob or the pump or the fuel cap all the time. Pump a little more pressure in here. It's still only hitting about every third time. I may have to... There, it's doing a little better now. Now it's sealing up a little better, but probably be worth putting the new pump leather in too. But it is burning, and it brightened right up. And I'll wipe this off just a little bit. Dad and I gotta get going before too long from here, but tonight I will light this back up at home. My glass is filthy. Hold on, I'm gonna go clean this glass a little bit. Wipe it down with a piece of Montana newspaper. Now Dad's not going to be able to read this page worth of shit.
Oh, I've got plenty of pictures.
I can live with that. The Coleman logo is so faint. There we go. You can barely see it, but you might be able to, once it's in there. Let's get the camera over here. Now I'll bet you'll be able to see that old green sunrise Coleman logo on there. And I saw when I was putting it in there and the light hit it, on the back of it, it's even more faint, but you can barely make out the old Pyrex made in USA on there. That's pretty cool. And the lantern seems to be doing pretty okay.
Quite enough.
No, it should make a better squeaking sound than that. So there we go. This whole lantern's back alive after who knows how many years sitting around. Seems to be burning pretty nice. So I'm gonna shut it off for now. Dad and I got to get going, and then this evening I'll get it back out and I'll light it up at home and get a shot of it after dark tonight. Okay folks, I'm back at home in the backyard now. The old lantern's burning good. It's been burning for a couple hours now. I'm gonna give her a few pumps here. Let it go a couple more hours before I shut it down for the night tonight. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button, leave the video a like, leave a comment. Come on back next week, folks. We'll have a video or something for you to watch here. Thanks for watching.